The Sterling Club had seen its share of powerful people walk through those mahogany doors. Senators, oil executives, tech moguls worth billions. But on this particular evening, the most powerful man in the room was wearing faded jeans and worn sneakers, and nobody knew it. Derek Morrison, the restaurant's arrogant manager, took one look at the casually dressed customer and made a decision that would destroy his career in less than 20 minutes. What started as routine discrimination became a public humiliation that had the entire dining room laughing and recording on their phones. The victim remained calm throughout the abuse, politely asking for nothing more than a table for dinner. But when Derek suggested he try McDonald's instead and declare that some people simply don't belong in places like the Sterling Club, the stranger reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple black card. It wasn't a credit card. It wasn't a business card. It was something that would make Derek's face go white with terror and turn his world completely upside down in a matter of minutes. Derek had 17 complaints of discrimination buried in his file. He had spent years humiliating customers based on their appearance. But tonight, he had chosen the wrong person to mess with. What happened next was swift, brutal, and absolutely deserved. This is the story of how one man's cruelty came back to destroy him, and how real power is used when someone finally has the ability to fight back. Vincent Hayes stepped out of his Tesla Model S and looked up at the gleaming facade of the Sterling Club. At 52, the tech billionaire had built an empire worth over $12 billion, but today he looked like any other guy grabbing dinner after a long day. His faded jeans had a small coffee stain on the left knee. His white sneakers showed signs of wear. His gray t-shirt bore the logo of a local charity 5K, run from 3 years ago. He had just finished a grueling 16-hour negotiation session that would reshape the restaurant industry forever. The deal papers were still warm in his briefcase. All he wanted was a quiet meal and a glass of wine to celebrate the biggest acquisition of his career. The Sterling Club sat in the corner of 5th and Madison like a monument to old money and exclusivity. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light through floor-to-ceiling windows. Men in $1,000 suits and women dripping in diamonds filled every table. This was where senators dined with oil executives and tech moguls sealed deals worth more than most countries' GDP. Vincent pushed through the heavy mahogany doors and stepped into the marble-floored lobby. The scent of expensive cologne mixed with the aroma of truffle oil and aged wine. A massive oil painting of the restaurant's founder dominated the far wall. Fresh orchids adorned every surface. Behind the hostess stand stood Emma Rodriguez, 28 years old with kind eyes and nervous energy. She looked up from her reservation book and offered a genuine smile. This was her 3rd month at the Sterling Club, and she still felt out of place among the city's elite. "Good evening, sir," Emma said warmly. "Do you have a reservation with us tonight?" "I don't, but I was hoping you might have something available," Vincent replied, his voice calm and polite. "Just a table for one." Emma glanced at her book, then back at Vincent. She noticed his casual attire, but didn't let it change her tone. "Let me see what we have available. It might be a few minutes, but I think we can accommodate you." Before she could continue, a sharp voice cut through the air like a blade. "Emma, what exactly do you think you're doing?" Derek Morrison strode across the lobby with the confidence of a man who believed his own hype. At 38, he had worked his way up to general manager through a combination of ruthless ambition and shameless brown-nosing. His perfectly styled hair gleamed under the chandelier light. His tailored suit probably cost more than most people made in a month. Diamond cufflinks caught the light as he gestured dismissively. Derek's eyes swept over Vincent from head to toe, taking in every detail of his casual appearance. His lip curled in disgust. "Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding," Derek said, his voice dripping with condescension. "The Sterling Club maintains certain standards of dress and clientele. We're not really the type of establishment that caters to." He paused, letting his gaze linger on Vincent's worn sneakers. Walk-ins. The conversation at nearby tables began to quiet as other diners turned to watch the unfolding drama. Someone pulled out their phone and started recording. Vincent remained perfectly calm. "I understand you have standards. I'm simply looking for a table to enjoy dinner." Derek let out a short, humorless laugh. "This isn't McDonald's, buddy. The Sterling Club has a very exclusive membership and reservation system. You can't just wander in off the street wearing." He gestured vaguely at Vincent's outfit. "That." Emma shifted uncomfortably behind the hostess stand. Mr. Morrison, I was just checking availability. Emma, you're new here, so let me explain how this works. Derek interrupted, his voice rising slightly. We don't seat people who clearly don't belong. Look around. He swept his arm toward the dining room. Do you see anyone else dressed like a teenager going to the mall? The dining room had gone almost completely silent now. Wealthy patrons craned their necks to get a better view of the spectacle. A woman in a fur coat whispered something to her companion, and they both laughed quietly. Vincent's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained level. I can assure you I can afford to dine here. Can you? Derek's voice grew louder, more theatrical. He was clearly enjoying having an audience. Because our average entree starts at $150. Our wine list begins at $300 per bottle. This isn't some chain restaurant where you can get a burger and fries for $20. A man at a corner table chuckled and muttered something about keeping the riffraff out. His dinner companion nodded approvingly. Emma looked mortified. She had dealt with difficult customers before, but she had never seen Derek be quite this cruel to someone who had been nothing but polite. Vincent took a slow breath. I understand your concern about maintaining standards. Perhaps we could find a solution that works for everyone. The solution is simple, Derek said, his voice now carrying clearly across the entire restaurant. There's an Applebee's about 6 blocks down the street. I'm sure they'd be happy to seat you immediately. No reservation required, and I think you'll find the dress code much more flexible. Several diners laughed openly now. The woman with the phone angled it to get a better shot of Vincent's face. Derek stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough to seem reasonable while ensuring his words still carried to the watching crowd. Look, I'm trying to save you some embarrassment here. Even if I seated you, you'd be surrounded by people who actually belong in a place like this. You'd stick out like a sore thumb. Why put yourself through that? Vincent's eyes remained fixed on Derek's face. You seem very confident about who belongs where. 20 years in hospitality tends to give you a good eye for these things, Derek said smugly. I can spot someone who's out of their league from across the room. And, buddy, you are definitely out of your league. The dining room buzzed with whispered conversations and poorly concealed laughter. Emma wanted to disappear into the floor. She had grown up in a working-class family and knew what it felt like to be judged for not having enough money or wearing the right clothes. Mr. Morrison, Emma said quietly, maybe we could find a table in the back section. Emma, you're not thinking clearly, Derek snapped. This gentleman obviously took a wrong turn somewhere. The Sterling Club isn't for everyone, and that's exactly what makes it special. Our clients expect a certain level of exclusivity. Vincent nodded slowly. Exclusivity based on what, exactly? Derek's smile turned predatory. Based on understanding that some places are reserved for people of a certain caliber. People who have earned a right to be here through success, achievement, and proper breeding. Not everyone gets a seat at the table, and frankly, that's how it should be. The cruelty in Derek's voice was unmistakable now. He wasn't just refusing service, he was publicly humiliating someone for entertainment. A distinguished older man at table 12 leaned over to his wife. Good for Derek. Can't have just anyone wandering in here. Vincent's hand moved to his jacket pocket. I see. And you've determined I haven't earned that, right? I've determined that you don't understand what this place represents, Derek said, gesturing grandly at the opulent surroundings. The Sterling Club has been serving the city's most important people for over 50 years. Senators, judges, business leaders, old money families. People with power, influence, and most importantly, class. He leaned in closer, his voice taking on a mock confidential tone that was still loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Between you and me, even if you could somehow afford the prices here, you'd be doing yourself a favor by leaving. You don't want to be the guy everyone's staring at and whispering about all night. Vincent pulled something from his pocket. It was a simple black card, matte finish, no visible logos or text. He held it casually between 2 fingers. Derek glanced at the card and scoffed. What's that supposed to be? Some kind of credit card. Listen, I don't care if it's black, platinum, or made of solid gold. Money can't buy class, and it definitely can't buy you a table here tonight. You're absolutely certain about that? Vincent asked quietly. 100% certain, Derek declared, playing to his audience. You could pull out a briefcase full of cash right now, and I still wouldn't seat you. The Sterling Club isn't just about money, it's about standards. And you, my friend, don't meet our standards. The dining room erupted in a mixture of gasps and applause. Several patrons raised their wine glasses in Derek's direction. Emma felt sick to her stomach. She had watched this man be polite and respectful throughout the entire humiliating exchange, and Derek had tore him apart for sport. Vincent looked around the room, taking in the faces of everyone who had enjoyed the show. Some looked smugly satisfied. Others seemed uncomfortable, but didn't speak up. A few were still recording on their phones. You know what the interesting thing about standards is? Vincent said, his voice carrying a strange new quality that made Derek's confident smile waver slightly. What's that? Derek asked, though he suddenly seemed less sure of himself. Vincent held up the black card between them. They tend to change very quickly when the right person walks through the door. Derek's eyes narrowed as he stared at the card. Something about Vincent's sudden calm was unsettling. What are you talking about? This isn't a credit card, Vincent said simply. Before Derek could respond, the restaurant's front door opened again. A woman in an expensive business suit walked in with quick, purposeful steps. She scanned the room until her eyes landed on Vincent, and her face immediately shifted to an expression of barely controlled panic. "Mr. Hayes," she called out, her voice cutting through the confused murmur of the dining room. "I came as soon as I got your message." Derek's face went completely white. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Vincent Hayes. The Vincent Hayes. Founder and CEO of Hayes Technologies. Net worth over $12 billion. One of the most powerful men in America. And Derek Morrison had just spent the last 10 minutes publicly humiliating him in front of a room full of witnesses and cell phone cameras. The black card in Vincent's hand wasn't plastic at all. It was a piece of paper. A very important piece of paper that was about to turn Derek's world completely upside down. The woman in the business suit approached them quickly, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She carried a leather briefcase and wore the expression of someone delivering news that would change everything. Vincent looked directly into Derek's horrified eyes and smiled for the first time since walking through the door. "Derek," he said quietly, "I think it's time we had a real conversation about standards." The woman in the business suit extended her hand to Vincent with the practiced efficiency of someone used to crisis management. Jessica Parker, 34 years old, had been Vincent's personal attorney for 8 years. She had seen him navigate hostile takeovers, congressional hearings, and billion-dollar lawsuits without breaking a sweat. But right now, she looked genuinely concerned about the situation she had walked into. "Jessica," Vincent said calmly, "I'd like you to meet Derek Morrison, the general manager of the Sterling Club." "Derek, this is Jessica Parker, my attorney." Derek's face had gone from white to green. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the restaurant's perfectly controlled climate. His mouth opened and closed several times before any sound came out. "Mr. Hayes," Derek croaked, his voice barely above a whisper. I had no idea. I didn't realize." "Didn't realize what?" Vincent asked, his tone conversational but with an edge that made everyone in earshot hold their breath. "That I might actually be able to afford dinner here. Or that someone dressed casually might deserve basic human decency." Jessica opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick manila folder. The movement was deliberate and ominous. "Mr. Hayes, I have the documents you requested. The acquisition was completed at 4:30 this afternoon." Derek's knees nearly buckled. "Acquisition?" Vincent took the folder from Jessica and held it casually at his side. "Derek, do you know what this black card actually is?" Derek shook his head mutely, unable to form words. "It's a notification card," Vincent explained, his voice carrying clearly across the now completely silent dining room. "When someone of my level makes a significant business acquisition, certain key personnel receive immediate notification. The card contains a simple message and a phone number." He held up the matte black card so Derek could see it clearly. In small, elegant silver lettering, it read, "Hayes Technologies Corporate Restructuring Division. Call immediately. The phone number connects directly to my legal team," Vincent continued. "I pressed the small button on the back of this card approximately 3 minutes ago. That's why Jessica is here." Emma watched in fascination and horror as Derek's entire world crumbled in real time. She had never seen someone's arrogance evaporate so completely and so quickly. Jessica cleared her throat and opened the folder. "Mr. Morrison, at 4:30 this afternoon, Hayes Technologies completed the acquisition of Morrison Restaurant Group." Derek's eyes went wide. Morrison Restaurant Group was the parent company that owned the Sterling Club's franchise rights, along with 46 other high-end restaurants across the country. That's impossible, Derek whispered. MRG isn't for sale. They've been family-owned for 3 generations. They were until this morning, Jessica said matter-of-factly. The Morrison family accepted an offer of $2.4 billion for complete buyout of all assets, properties, and subsidiary operations. Vincent smiled coldly. Funny coincidence about the name, isn't it, Derek? Morrison Restaurant Group. Derek Morrison. Are you by any chance related to the Morrison family, who just sold me their entire company? Derek's face crumpled. Thomas Morrison is my uncle. He started MRG with my grandfather in 1972. Was your uncle? Vincent corrected. Thomas Morrison is now a very wealthy retiree living in the Bahamas. And you, Derek, now work for me. The implications hit Derek like a physical blow. He had just spent 10 minutes publicly humiliating his new boss. His ultimate boss. The man who now controlled not just his job, but his entire career path in the industry his family had built. Jessica pulled out another document. Mr. Morrison, as part of the acquisition, Hayes Technologies requested a comprehensive review of all management personnel across the 47 restaurant locations. Derek's hands started shaking. What kind of review? Employment history, customer satisfaction scores, incident reports, disciplinary actions, and any outstanding complaints or legal issues. Jessica read from the document. Your file makes for particularly interesting reading. Vincent stepped closer to Derek, his voice dropping to a conversational level that somehow felt more threatening than if he had been shouting. Did you know that in your 4 years at the Sterling Club, you've had 17 formal complaints filed against you for discriminatory behavior? Derek's mouth fell open. Those were all dismissed. They were buried, Vincent corrected. Your uncle made sure they never saw the light of day. But I own all those files now, Derek. Every complaint, every witness statement, every incident report that was swept under the rug. Jessica pulled out a thick stack of papers. Brighton Hills Country Club, 2019. You refused service to a black family because their children were too loud. The Meridian Restaurant, 2020. You had a Hispanic busboy fired for speaking Spanish to a customer who specifically requested help in Spanish. The Palace Grill, 2021. You told a disabled veteran that his service dog made other customers uncomfortable. With each incident Jessica read, Derek seemed to shrink smaller. The confident, arrogant man who had been holding court just minutes earlier was disappearing before everyone's eyes. But my personal favorite, Jessica continued, is from right here at the Sterling Club 3 months ago. You refused to seat a woman because she was wearing a hijab, telling her that the Sterling Club catered to American values only. Derek looked around desperately, as if searching for an escape route. The other diners who had been laughing and applauding his performance earlier were now staring at him with disgust and embarrassment. Vincent opened the folder Jessica had given him and pulled out a single sheet of paper. This is your termination notice, Derek. Effective immediately. You can't fire me, Derek said, his voice rising in panic. I have a contract. I have rights. You had a contract with Morrison Restaurant Group, Vincent corrected. That contract contained a morality clause that allows for immediate termination in cases of discriminatory behavior or actions that damage the company's reputation. Congratulations, Derek. You've managed to trigger both conditions in a single evening. The dining room was completely silent except for the sound of Derek's labored breathing. Even the kitchen staff had stopped working to listen to the confrontation unfolding in the lobby. Jessica pulled out her phone and began typing. I'm notifying building security to escort you from the premises. You have 15 minutes to collect your personal belongings from your office. This isn't over, Derek said, his voice cracking with desperation. I'll sue you for wrongful termination. I'll fight this. Vincent's expression didn't change. With what lawyer, Derek? Let me save you some time and money. I've had my legal team compile a comprehensive list of every law firm in the city. Guess what they all have in common? Derek stared at him blankly. They've all either worked for Hayes Technologies at some point, or they want to work for us in the future, Vincent explained. Good luck finding someone willing to take a discrimination case against me when their entire career depends on staying in my good graces. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. Vincent wasn't just firing Derek, he was systematically destroying his ability to fight back. But that's not the best part, Vincent continued, his voice taking on an almost cheerful tone. You see, Derek, I believe in the power of social media. And it looks like your little performance tonight was captured by quite a few people. He gestured toward the dining room, where at least a dozen phones were still recording. The woman in the fur coat was live streaming to her Instagram followers. A man at the bar was uploading video to TikTok in real time. By tomorrow morning, videos of you publicly humiliating someone based on their appearance will be all over the internet, Vincent said. And thanks to facial recognition technology and social media algorithms, everyone will know exactly who you are and where you work. Well, where you used to work. Jessica looked up from her phone. Security will be here in 2 minutes, Mr. Morrison. Derek's legs finally gave out, and he collapsed into a nearby chair. The fight had gone out of him completely. Please, he whispered. I have a mortgage. I have car payments. I have a reputation to maintain. You had a reputation, Vincent corrected. And frankly, Derek, it wasn't a very good one to begin with. Emma had been watching the entire exchange with a mixture of horror and fascination. She had never seen justice delivered so swiftly and so completely. But she also couldn't help feeling a small stab of sympathy for Derek, even after what he had done. Vincent noticed her expression and turned to address her directly. Emma, isn't it? She nodded, suddenly nervous about being the center of attention. You've been working here for 3 months, Vincent said. It wasn't a question. Yes, sir, Emma replied quietly. During Derek's little performance, you tried multiple times to offer me service despite his objections. Why? Emma looked around the room at all the faces staring at her. Because you were polite and respectful, and you deserve to be treated the same way. Vincent smiled, and for the first time since entering the restaurant, it was a genuine, warm expression. That's exactly right. Basic human decency shouldn't depend on someone's bank account or their choice of clothing. He turned back to Derek, who was slumped in the chair like a deflated balloon. Derek, you asked me earlier if I understood what this place represents. Let me tell you what I think it represents now. Vincent looked around the opulent dining room, taking in the crystal chandeliers, the marble floors, the oil paintings, and the wealthy patrons who were all hanging on his every word. This place represents everything that's wrong with how we treat each other, he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the restaurant. It represents the idea that money and status give us the right to humiliate others. That exclusivity is more important than humanity. That some people matter more than others based on superficial judgments. The building's security guards entered through the front door, 2 large men in black suits who moved with the quiet efficiency of professionals. Jessica pointed toward Derek. Mr. Morrison needs to collect his belongings and leave the premises immediately. As the security guards approached Derek, he looked up at Vincent with desperate eyes. What am I supposed to do now? You've destroyed my career, my reputation, everything I've worked for. Vincent's expression didn't soften. You're going to do exactly what you told me to do 20 minutes ago, Derek. You're going to figure out where you actually belong. The security guards helped Derek to his feet and began escorting him toward the back offices. As they walked away, Vincent called out one final message. Derek, there's an employment office about 6 blocks down the street. I'm sure they'd be happy to help you find something immediately. No experience required, and I think you'll find the standards much more flexible. The echo of Derek's own words hung in the air as he disappeared through the service corridor, flanked by security guards. Vincent turned back to Emma, who was still standing behind the hostess stand in shock. Emma, I'd like to offer you Derek's position as general manager of the Sterling Club. Her eyes went wide. Sir, I don't have any management experience, but you have something much more valuable, Vincent replied. You have the ability to treat people with respect regardless of who they are or what they look like. That's the most important qualification for this job. Jessica was already pulling out another set of documents. The position comes with a salary of $150,000 annually, full benefits, and a performance bonus structure that could double your income within 2 years. Emma's hands flew to her mouth. She had been making $32,000 a year as a hostess. Vincent was offering her more money than she had ever dreamed of earning. There's just one condition, Vincent added. The first rule of this restaurant is now that everyone gets treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their appearance, background, or perceived wealth. Can you handle that? Tears started forming in Emma's eyes. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Vincent nodded and turned to address the entire dining room. His voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to commanding attention from rooms full of powerful people. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for the educational experience you've provided tonight. You've shown me exactly what kind of establishment the Sterling Club has been, and exactly what kind of changes need to be made. The wealthy diners shifted uncomfortably in their seats, suddenly aware that their entertainment at Derek's performance might have consequences. Effective immediately, the Sterling Club will be operating under new management and new policies, Vincent announced. Anyone who has a problem with treating all customers with respect and dignity is welcome to dine elsewhere. He paused and looked around the room, making eye contact with several people who had been laughing at Derek's performance earlier. I want to be very clear about something, he continued. What happened here tonight was not justice being served. It was a long overdue reckoning for behavior that should never have been tolerated in the first place. Vincent walked over to the table, where the woman in the fur coat was still holding her phone. She quickly tried to hide it, but Vincent had already seen that she was recording. Ma'am, I noticed you've been documenting tonight's events. I hope you'll consider sharing that footage widely. I think it's important for people to see what discrimination looks like and what happens when someone finally has the power to do something about it. The woman nodded mutely, her face flushed with embarrassment. Vincent returned to the center of the room for his final announcement. The Sterling Club will reopen tomorrow under new management with a new mission: to provide exceptional dining experiences to anyone who walks through our doors, regardless of their appearance, background, or bank account balance. He looked directly at Emma, who was still processing her sudden promotion. Emma, I trust you'll make sure that happens. As Vincent headed toward the door, Jessica gathered her documents and followed. The dining room remained eerily quiet, with dozens of wealthy patrons sitting in stunned silence, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Vincent paused at the front door and turned back one final time. Oh, and one more thing. Derek Morrison is now permanently banned from all 47 restaurants in the Hayes Technologies hospitality portfolio. I want to make sure everyone understands that actions have consequences. The door closed behind Vincent and Jessica with a soft click, leaving the Sterling Club in complete silence, except for the sound of Emma crying tears of joy behind the hostess stand. The Billionaire CEO had been denied entry at a fancy restaurant. He had pulled out a card that shut the place down. But more importantly, he had used his power to ensure that what happened to him would never happen to anyone else. At least not at his restaurants. 3 months later, Derek Morrison sat in the cramped break room of Quick Stop Gas and Go, staring at his reflection in the scratched surface of an old microwave. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting harsh shadows across his face. His manager uniform, a polyester shirt with his name embroidered in cheap thread, hung loose on his frame. He had lost 20 pounds since that night at the Sterling Club. Derek pulled out his phone and opened the news app, a daily ritual that had become both compulsion and torture. The business section featured another story about Hayes Technologies' expanding restaurant empire. Vincent Hayes had acquired 12 more restaurant chains in the past 3 months, each one implementing the same dignity and respect policies that had transformed the Sterling Club. The irony wasn't lost on Derek. The man he had humiliated was now being hailed as a revolutionary figure in the hospitality industry. Restaurant owners across the country were voluntarily adopting Hayes standards, comprehensive anti-discrimination policies that prioritized customer dignity over arbitrary dress codes and social status. Morrison, your break ended 5 minutes ago, called Janet, the assistant manager who was 10 years younger than Derek and made half what he used to earn in a single day. Derek shoved his phone back in his pocket and returned to his position behind the counter. The gas station was located in one of the city's business districts, which meant he regularly served people from his former world. Lawyers in expensive suits buying energy drinks between court appearances. Investment bankers grabbing coffee before early morning meetings. Restaurant managers picking up supplies for their establishments. Most didn't recognize him. But occasionally, someone would do a double take, their eyes widening as they realized they were being served by the man whose spectacular downfall had become legendary in certain circles. The bell above the door chimed, and Derek looked up to see a familiar figure entering the store. Vincent Hayes walked in wearing jeans and a casual button-down shirt, looking exactly as he had that night 3 months ago. Derek's heart began racing, and his palms immediately started sweating. Vincent approached the counter with a bottle of water and a package of mixed nuts. He placed them on the counter and looked directly into Derek's eyes. "Good evening, Derek," Vincent said calmly. Derek's hands trembled as he scanned the items. That'll be $4.67, he managed to say. Vincent handed him a $5 bill. Keep the change. For a moment, neither man spoke. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and the sound of traffic from the busy street filtered through the windows. How are you doing, Derek? Vincent asked, his tone surprisingly neutral. Derek's throat felt dry. I'm getting by. Vincent nodded. That's good. Getting by is important. Derek finished the transaction, but Vincent didn't immediately leave. Instead, he stood there studying Derek's face with the same intensity he had shown that night at the restaurant. Do you know why I stop by here occasionally? Vincent asked. Derek shook his head, not trusting his voice. Because I want to make sure you're learning the right lessons from what happened. Derek's jaw tightened. The humiliation of that night still burned in his chest, made worse by months of financial struggle and professional exile. I think I've learned plenty. Have you? Vincent asked. What exactly have you learned? Derek's composure finally cracked. I've learned that you have enough power to destroy someone's life over a single mistake. I've learned that all your talk about dignity and respect only applies when it's convenient for you. Vincent's expression didn't change. You think what happened to you was about a single mistake? I was doing my job, Derek said, his voice rising slightly. The Sterling Club had standards. I was maintaining those standards. What standards, Derek? Be specific. Derek glanced around the gas station, aware that other customers were starting to pay attention to their conversation. We catered to a certain clientele. People expected a certain atmosphere. People expected to feel superior to others, Vincent corrected. That's not a standard, Derek. That's systematic discrimination. Derek's face flushed red. Easy to say when you're worth $12 billion. Vincent leaned against the counter, his posture relaxed but his eyes intense. Do you know what I was doing before I came to your restaurant that night? Derek didn't respond. I just finished acquiring Morrison Restaurant Group. The deal had taken 8 months to negotiate and cost me $2.4 billion. I could have gone anywhere in the city to celebrate. Any restaurant would have cleared their best table for me if I called ahead and identified myself. Vincent paused, letting that sink in. But I didn't want special treatment based on my name or my bank account. I wanted to be served like any other customer. And you showed me exactly how you treat customers who don't meet your arbitrary standards. Derek's hands clenched into fists at his sides. So you destroyed my career to make a point. I destroyed your career because you destroyed other people's dignity for sport, Vincent replied. That night wasn't an isolated incident, Derek. It was a pattern of behavior that had been going on for years. Vincent pulled out his phone and showed Derek the screen. It displayed a news article with a headline, Sterling Club under new management sees record customer satisfaction ratings. Emma Rodriguez has turned the Sterling Club into one of the most successful restaurants in the city, Vincent said. Customer complaints are down 97%. Revenue is up 43%. Staff turnover has dropped to almost zero. Derek stared at the article, his jaw working silently. Do you know what the difference is between Emma's management style and yours? Vincent asked. She lets anyone walk in off the street, Derek muttered. She treats people like human beings, Vincent corrected. Rich or poor, well-dressed or casual, young or old, every customer gets the same level of respect and service. And it turns out that when you treat people well, they want to come back. Vincent put his phone away and picked up his water bottle. The night I walked into the Sterling Club, you had a choice, Derek. You could have treated me with basic courtesy and continued living your life. Instead, you chose to humiliate someone for your own entertainment. Derek's voice was barely above a whisper. I didn't know who you were. That's exactly the point, Vincent said. Your behavior shouldn't change based on who someone is or what they're worth. Every person deserves to be treated with dignity. The bell above the door chimed again, and Bradley Whitmore walked into the gas station. Derek's former boss looked haggard and tired, wearing a wrinkled suit that had seen better days. His eyes widened when he saw Vincent. Vincent, Bradley said nervously. I didn't expect to see you here. Vincent turned to acknowledge Bradley with a nod. Bradley, how's the job search going? Bradley's face flushed with embarrassment. After losing his franchise rights to the Sterling Club, he had been unable to find work in the restaurant industry. Word had spread quickly about his role in the discrimination incident, and no one wanted to risk associating with him. It's been challenging, Bradley admitted. People seem to think I'm unemployable. You're not unemployable, Vincent said matter-of-factly. You're just learning that reputation matters. Your reputation is that you ran a restaurant that systematically discriminated against customers based on their appearance. Bradley glanced at Derek behind a counter, and Derek looked away in shame. I never told Derek to treat people that way, Bradley said defensively. But you never told him to stop either, Vincent replied. You had 17 formal complaints about Derek's behavior over 4 years, and you buried every single one of them. That makes you complicit. Vincent picked up his nuts and headed toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back to address both men. Derek, Bradley, I want you both to understand something very clearly. What happened to you wasn't revenge. It was accountability. For years, you used your positions to make other people feel small and unwelcome. You created an environment where discrimination was not just tolerated, but rewarded. He paused, looking between them. The reason you're both struggling to find work isn't because I'm blacklisting you. It's because the entire industry is changing. Restaurant owners are realizing that treating customers with dignity is good for business. Your approach to hospitality is becoming obsolete. Derek found his voice. So what are we supposed to do? Work in gas stations for the rest of our lives? Vincent considered the question seriously. That depends on whether you're capable of genuine change. There are opportunities for people who can learn from their mistakes and commit to doing better. He reached into his jacket and pulled out 2 business cards, placing them on the counter between Derek and Bradley. Those are for a nonprofit organization that provides job training and placement services for people in career transition. They specialize in helping individuals who need to rebuild their professional reputation. Derek picked up one of the cards. It read, Fresh Start Career Services, Second Chances for First-Class People. The program is intensive, Vincent explained. 6 months of training in customer service, conflict resolution, and inclusive business practices. They also provide job placement assistance with employers who are committed to giving people genuine second chances. Bradley stared at his card suspiciously. What's the catch? No catch, Vincent said. But there is a requirement. You have to acknowledge that your previous behavior was wrong, demonstrate genuine remorse, and commit to treating all people with respect going forward. Derek's pride flared. You want us to grovel. I want you to grow, Vincent corrected. There's a difference between groveling and taking responsibility for your actions. Vincent opened the door, but didn't leave immediately. Derek, do you remember what you told me that night about some people earning the right to be treated well? Derek nodded reluctantly. You were right about one thing. People do have to earn certain things. But basic human dignity isn't one of them. That's something every person deserves, regardless of their circumstances. Vincent stepped outside, then turned back one final time. The program starts next Monday. Whether you participate is entirely up to you. But this is probably the last second chance either of you will get. The door closed behind him, leaving Derek and Bradley alone in the fluorescent-lit gas station. Derek stared at the business card in his hand. Fresh Start Career Services. The irony was almost too much to bear. The man whose life he had tried to make miserable was now offering him a genuine opportunity to rebuild. Bradley broke the silence. Are you going to do it? Derek thought about his apartment with its stack of overdue bills, his empty refrigerator, his former colleagues who crossed the street to avoid talking to him, the look of pity in his mother's eyes when she asked about his job search. I don't know, Derek said honestly. Are you? Bradley looked around the gas station, taking in the scratched lottery ticket displays and the smell of stale coffee. 3 months ago, I owned one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. Now I can't get hired to manage a food truck. He picked up his business card and studied it. Maybe it's time to try something different. Derek watched through the window as Vincent got into his Tesla and drove away. The billionaire could have destroyed them completely and walked away. Instead, he was offering them a path back to respectability. The question was whether Derek's pride would allow him to take it. Janet appeared from the back office. Morrison, your shift ends in 10 minutes. Make sure you restock the coffee station before you leave. Yes, ma'am, Derek replied automatically. As he wiped down the coffee machine, Derek thought about Vincent's words. Every person deserves to be treated with dignity. It was such a simple concept, but somehow Derek had spent years believing that respect was something to be rationed based on social status and appearance. The Sterling Club continued to thrive under Emma's management. Derek read every article about its success, each one a reminder of what he had lost through his own arrogance and cruelty. But tonight, for the first time in months, he wasn't reading those articles with pure bitterness. Tonight, he was reading them with something that might have been hope. Derek looked at the business card one more time before slipping it into his wallet. Fresh Start Career Services. Second chances for first-class people. Maybe it was time to find out what kind of person he really was when he stripped away all the arrogance and prejudice. Maybe it was time to learn how to treat people the way he should have been treating them all along. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead as Derek finished his shift, but for the first time in 3 months, he didn't feel like the light was going out on his future. Vincent Hayes had gotten his revenge through justice served swift and complete. But more than that, he had proven that true power wasn't about destroying your enemies. It was about giving them the chance to become better people. Whether Derek and Bradley would take that chance remained to be seen. But the opportunity was there, waiting for them to decide who they wanted to be when they grew up.